You want to design your dream swimming pool. I can help you do that. Let's go over the whole subject right now. So where does this subject start, designing your dream swimming pool? Well, I think you need a budget. And then I think you need to throw that garbage right out the window, because that's not going to even be close to enough money to build your dream swimming pool. I mean, we can try to make wise decisions and budget the money as well as we can, but if you want to build a dream swimming pool, holy cow, the bills pile up quickly. So I'll advise some ways along the way where you can kind of save some money, because there's different ways to build a swimming pool. Are you building like a Honda or a Hyundai or a Ferrari? There's different levels to the game here, and depending on what your budget is, I can tell you with experience that pretty much everybody who goes about building a swimming pool at some point ends up having to revisit the budget because the bills pile up. Where it's the bolt-ons, the extras, okay, we want a slide, we want a diving board, we want a bunch of, water features of some kind or other, maybe an attached hot tub, this or that. So now we have the pool, but everything I just said is completely outside of just a basic swimming pool. You could swim in a basic swimming pool. All of that extra stuff now costs more than the original swimming pool. Maybe you were planning for that, maybe you weren't. Like an awesome slide. Let's say you want an awesome slide, one that does like a couple of turns or something like that. You're into many thousands of dollars, like deep into the many thousands of dollars for a fancy one of those. And that's just like one thing. Like diving boards, again, many thousands of dollars. Every feature that you're adding, the bills are getting higher. If you tack on a couple of more expensive options, like those were the cheap ones, an automatic pool cover, that would be one of the more expensive options. Another expensive option for a new pool installation would be an in-floor cleaning system. I mean, these items can be $10,000 each or more just to add them to your swimming pool installation. And talking about the pool installation itself, what kind of pool are you installing? Basically, there's three choices. You're going to get a fiberglass pool, you're going to get a vinyl liner pool, or you're going to get some sort of concrete pool. And it gets confusing for some people. There's a lot of different names for different kinds of concrete pools. Shotcrete pools, gunite pools, tile pools, cast pools. I mean, there's different names, but ultimately all of those are concrete pools. They all fall under the classification of concrete pools. So you're going to choose one of these three things, and then really that's going to dictate, or more so than the reverse order, your budget is going to dictate which one of these three likely you're going to be looking at. So generally speaking, just to give you an idea, and to tell you first, prices vary wildly in the swimming pool industry depending on where you're located. But in general, it's commonly accepted that in-ground vinyl liner pool kits, those are the most economical ones. Those are the most do-it-yourself friendly ones. Those are pretty much the entry level into the in-ground market. Above that, you have fiberglass pools, and then above that again, you have concrete pools, and that includes ones with glass tile or different kinds of pebble interior surfaces. These are, or just plaster pool. All of those are just concrete swimming pools. And it doesn't matter whether it was a cast in place or whether it was shotcrete or whether it was a gunite process for applying the concrete. Again, these are all just examples of concrete pools. Okay, so you picked your budget and we tripled it. And now we're ready to build your dream pool. Where does that start? For me, it's going to start with volume. Let's just talk about size. What kind of swimming pool are you talking about here in terms of size? And commonly speaking, within the industry, we work with some standards. Even if you end up not following that standard, this just gives us some building blocks to work with. And the standards kind of start around a 12 by 24 foot swimming pool. Or you might have a 14 by 28 foot swimming pool, 16 by 32, 18 by 36, 20 by 40. There's a couple of, 22 by 44s and some L shapes and stuff like that. And then occasionally a 30 by 50. That's really big. You rarely see that on the residential market. Usually 20 by 40 or so are considered to be the largest ones on the residential market. Of course, I asked for the volume of the pool and not the square footage, and so we have to now talk about the depth. If you want any sort of diving facilities in this pool, that is a whole different conversation to talk about, because there are minimum diving envelope requirements for the size and shape of the pool that you're going to have to adhere to, and that's going to be dependent on where you live. So I can't really advise to that, except to say that there are a bunch of rules that you're going to have to follow, that you're going to have to look into, and the pool's going to have to be fairly deep. So the thing about deep pools, and they used to be built deep back in the 70s and 80s, it was very common to have huge, very deep swimming pools. But it costs a lot to operate these pools. Actually, it costs a lot to do anything to these pools. You need to add chlorine? Well, you're going to need a lot of it. You need to buy a new filter? It needs to be huge, things like that. It's even the workload for these large pools, like scooping, vacuuming, brushing the floors, it all just takes more time and more effort. And so whilst it was kind of like a status symbol to have this giant residential swimming pool, people kind of got away from it. The real estate parcels got smaller in size, and people just got out of the habit of paying for all of this extra pool, which really you're not using. And so then you have these small pools. But we were just recently talking about diving into pools, and those two things really don't mix. You need a fairly large pool to have a pool deep enough and with a diving envelope long enough and wide enough to actually safely accommodate people diving in. So if you choose the deep pool, you're choosing a path that you can't come back from, and it's going to cost you more every day. You're going to have to run your pump more. You're going to have to run it, at higher speeds and for longer hours, and you're going to need to buy a bigger filter, and you're going to need to use more chlorine and more pH control, and everything's just going to be a little bit more forever for the life of the pool. So it's a real decision that you should consider, because a lot of people who own these large pools, if you ask them, like, how much use are you getting out of this space? They're like, it's way overkill. It's like, we thought we were getting the one that we wanted. It's actually way overkill. And I can attest to this personally. Swimming in a 20 by 40 swimming pool, you can have multiple groups of people who are like together, but they're nowhere near the other groups of people. And you can have 3, 4, 5 of those groups nowhere near, not within touching distance of the other people. It's a huge swimming pool. So unless you have a gigantic family, or you throw these incredible pool parties, you probably don't need that much swimming pool. And again, it's going to cost you a lot more. It's going to cost you a lot more for heating. It's going to cost you a lot more for the chemicals. It's just going to cost you a lot more for everything. But this process of building your dream pool starts there. We have to pick a number. I'm going to pick a reasonable number, and we're going to say 20,000 gallons. So that's going to be the size of this pool. It's going to be a weird shape, because we're going to choose a concrete pool. And you can have weird shapes with other pools too, but with concrete pools, you can kind of do anything. And if it's a dream pool, I don't know, I guess most people dream of a concrete pool, right? But that's what we're going to go with here. Let's start talking about the features of this dream pool. So right away, we'll classify it into 2 different areas. We're going to have the equipment set itself, so like pump, filter, heater, other stuff. And then we're going to have pool side. So then that's the pool side stuff. So these are the 2 different things. Maybe let's start with pool side, because that sounds more fun, right? First thing on the list, some kind of water feature, right? Like, this is what everybody says. Like, if we're building a pool, it's got to have some sort of water features. And before we even start talking about these water features and different features, let's talk about functionality built into this pool. There are different schools of thought for how you go about building a swimming pool. Some of the best builders would say every feature in the pool should have its own plumbing system and its own standalone pump with which to operate it. That way, the pump will always be right sized for the application. There's no interference or interface control mixing with other systems like the filtration system or other parts of your system. And I would agree, this is the optimal way to do things. It does take a little bit more in the budget, but like you're building a dream pool, it's hard to build a budget dream pool. So what's the disconnect here? How does that work? Well, that's what some people say to do. And you're like, yeah, okay, let's do it. That sounds good. Then we put the price together and you faint dead on the floor. And then once we revive you, we start talking about how we can chisel this price down just a little bit. And then we start talking about perhaps we could maybe share the flow. Maybe each and every feature doesn't need its own pump. Maybe we use one pump, maybe we use two, and that's enough, and we can get all the flow that we need for the features that you're looking for. But that's one of the ways that you start looking at a budget application for building a dream pool. In an ideal sense, each feature has its own pump. And so then, I might say to you, kind of just choose wisely, or we can maybe share a little bit of flow, and maybe we'll have two pumps, maybe three. Okay, let's look at that. So let's choose two, because I think that's more likely for more people. And let's just know that we have two pumps that we're going to work with on this system. What can we do with it? How many features can we have? The answer to that is going to depend on pipe size, how many suction interfaces you install, like how many main drains. You're like, yeah, main drains, no problem. I'm like, we need like 4 sets of main drains. Are you cool with doing that? And you're like, holy cow. There is a ton of considerations here, safety considerations and efficiency considerations. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of engineering happening below the hood when you're building a swimming pool. And this is about the point where we start to unpack all that stuff. And just maybe some general information you should know. 6 feet per second of suction line velocity is a safety limit that is, you should not go past this for any pipe, any suction line in your swimming pool. The Virginia Graham-Baker Act defines ways to build pools without, the risk, or with reduced risk for entrapment hazards. And one of the main things that they define, there's many things that they define when you build a pool. You have to adhere to all these things, but one of them is no suction line should have more than 6 feet per second of velocity. And to break that down into more consumable information, a 2-inch PVC pipe at 6 feet of water velocity, 6 feet per second water velocity, is about 65 gallons per minute. 1.5-inch pipe, 38 gallons per minute. 2.5-inch pipe, 90 gallons per minute. So that just gives you an idea there. So, most pools are built with 2-inch pipe. Whether it's optimal for efficiency is questionable, but that's what most pools are. So let's say that we're going to do that. We got 2 pumps in our system, and we're using 2-inch plumbing. So we're going to have the filtration pump right away, because every pool needs one of those. And then we're going to have a feature pump. And this feature pump is going to provide water for waterfalls that we determine in the future here in this discussion. If we have 1 set of suction outlets for our feature pump and it's 2-inch plumbing, then we have 65 gallons per minute to share for any water features that we want to use. Now, there's different kinds of water features. I mentioned deck jets earlier, and they're, little cuppers installed in the deck, and you get a little plume of water. They're okay. They're not the best. A lot of people get water features. Why do you get a water feature? It looks cool. Granted, how often are you running that? Think about it. How often are you actually using the little water jets? Pool parties, sure. Sunday when the kids are playing in the pool, definitely for a while. Deck jets are kind of notorious for being a thing that doesn't get used. And here's the reason why. It fails to accomplish a very important thing that people want when you buy a waterfall. You want the noise. Waterfall noise drowns out city noise. It drowns out traffic noise. It helps to suspend the disbelief here, and you can just be in your backyard oasis and you can pretend that, you're somewhere else. And there's really a magical component there. A lot of people really consider this when they install a pool, and definitely when they install a waterfall. And deck jets just aren't the right waterfall for that, because it just kind of sounds like somebody taking a leak in the pool. And that's just not, the break from reality that you're looking for. So deck jets kind of stand alone. I kind of don't like them, and they really should have a standalone pump, even though they don't really require much flow. Or we could potentially zone it in through automation. But I just encourage, deck jets aren't the one. Deck jets aren't the thing you're looking for. I've talked to a lot of pool owners, and by and large, deck jets are something that people tend to regret. They don't get used. They just sit there. They hold stagnant water. Eventually, you have to clean them out, and they squirt that disgusting water right into the pool, and it's not worth it. a better option, if you like waterfalls, like there's some options on the table here. And for me, the top of the food chain, let's start there. It's a shear descent waterfall. So it's just like a manufactured lip of a waterfall, which requires a certain amount of flow over it in order to break free, not just kind of track and dribble down the surface. Like nobody wants that waterfall. You want the waterfall that breaks free, arcs, and falls into the water. And these ones in particular do this like clean shear descent. And they are, in my opinion, the go-to. If you want a waterfall, this is the go-to. And they're a little finicky for how they install. They're a little finicky for the tiniest piece of debris will interrupt the flow pattern. And there's not really a lot of clean out ports and options. It's a little bit of a pain. It's still the best option in my opinion, because let's talk about another option for waterfalls here, like a big stone waterfall, right? I think a lot of people like those, want those, have those. I'm not sure. I don't recommend them. They're really heavy, and people who build pools, they're not necessarily artists. Do not take that the wrong way, guys. I know you're artists, but artisans, but people who build the pool, they do that every day. They're going to build 100 pools a year, whatever they do. How many waterfalls are they building a year? Is this regular business for them? Do you have a bunch of examples that you can go and look at that they've done before? Because I'm dubious of this whole rock waterfall thing. They're heavy. They leak a lot. If you run them all the time, they add a lot of minerals into the pool water. There's a lot of leaching of that. They're responsible for a lot of staining. They can contain like iron and metals and can cause staining. And they're a lot of money for something that's in your head. It's going to be awesome. You get it there and it's like, it's pretty less than awesome. Most of the reveals that I've seen or have been part of for like rock waterfall construction for pools kind of fell flat. They weren't the like amazing thing that you were hoping for. And it's just because the scale of money it would take to do that and the skill of the artisan building it would be so important. And then longevity, and rock waterfall is not where it's at. If you install a shear descent waterfall in some sort of, you could install it in a half wall. It could just be like somewhere else, but and they'd sell them by the linear foot. You could have a small one. You could buy a 4-foot one. If you're like, oh, I want 8-foot ones. Remember we were talking about pumps here a minute ago? We only have 65 gallons per minute. And those shear descent waterfalls, they could take 10 gallons per minute per linear foot more, right? A lot more, because there's different levels. Do you want the arc to be like here, or do you want to be further, or do you want it to be like way out with like serious flow? Then there's charts that you go to for each shear descent manufacturer, and that'll show you how much per linear foot you need in gallons per minute. And 65 gallons per minute is not going to get you there. Like, it's not. You're going to have to either upsize the plumbing so that we can have more without exceeding 6 feet per second of water velocity. That's a good option. We should look at doing that. If we went to like a 2.5-inch suction line for this water feature, we could have 90 gallons per minute. 90 gallons per minute. We could have a 6-foot long shear descent waterfall, I'm pretty sure. I don't think we're going to have like multiple 8-foot ones. I think we would need dedicated pumps, large ones, and dedicated plumbing, large stuff. 3-inch plumbing, if we went there, 138 gallons per minute for 6 feet per second of water velocity. 4-inch plumbing is 238 gallons per minute. So, I mean, past that, like normally 3 and 4 inches kind of where you top out for residential applications. Certainly you can go larger, and some people do. I've seen some crazy stuff out there. And if you want the big flow, it's not the gigantic pump. Like, yeah, you're going to need a powerful pump for sure, but it's all in the plumbing. If you want to deliver big flow, you need to have large plumbing to deliver that flow. Further to that, large plumbing means efficiency. It's a great thing to have in general. The slower you move water, the more efficiently it moves. The faster you move it, the more friction there is, and the more friction loss you experience to turbulence. And it's large pipes pay dividends on dream pool installations. So it's something to definitely consider here. We're going to go to 2.5-inch suction for that booster pump. For our shear descent waterfall, we're going to install a 6-foot shear descent waterfall. That eats the whole flow. We don't have any more flow for features and stuff like that in our dream pool. We had to pick and we picked. But I do want to talk about more features, because what if maybe we borrowed some flow from the filtration pump? Like, we're only talking about that booster pump. It's now just a shear descent waterfall pump. That's all it does. And you know what? I'm going to mention this before I move on from that. Shear descent waterfalls need a dedicated filter. So in addition to needing a dedicated pump for that feature needs a dedicated filter. You could choose an inline filter, or maybe, in parallel inline filters so we don't exceed their maximum design flow rate, or maybe like a standalone single cartridge 100 square foot cartridge filter that has a max design flow rate of 120 gallons per minute. Something like that would work pretty well to protect the shear descent lip from experiencing any debris passing through the system that's going to foul that edge. And then you won't have that shear arc anymore. It'll be all broken and round. It's not what you want. So a filter is how you solve that, and ours is going to have one. We're talking filtration pump for a second there. So the filtration pump runs and it, pushes water through the filter and the heater and the sanitizer and the whatever, and then back to the pool, and back to the pool through the return eyelets, the return ports. And we could, in theory, borrow some of that flow sometimes and divert it to another feature. Like, let's say we dropped deck jets earlier. Like, people love deck jets. So you really love you want the deck jets, we'll install the deck jets. Okay, we'll borrow some flow from the filtration pump during times when you're having the party. And the way you accomplish that would be through an automation panel, which is going to give you an interface control, and then mechanical motorized valve actuators, which are going to turn valves this way or that. And that's going to allow us to, when you want your party mode, you push the button, things are going to divert. And where we would have sent 100% of the water to the return port eyelets normally, in party mode, we'll send 50% of that water to the return ports, and 50% is going to go to these deck jets. And that's actually 50% of the flow is a lot. So we could actually have like a ton of deck jets, like a good line of them. You could even have we might be able to do 4 or 5 on each side of the pool with the amount of flow that we have there. Let's not go crazy. 3 or 4 on both sides of the pool. So we borrowed some flow from the filtration pump. Now we got the deck jets included in the dream pool when we want to use them. We have the shear descent pump and filter system. We still have 50% of that flow from the filtration pump. Yes, it goes to the returns in the pool, and it circulates, and it's important and all that good stuff. And under normal conditions, it will be. But what about party mode? We were talking about party mode before. We could borrow a little more flow. There's a little more flow available. We had 65 gallons per minute available because we were using a 2-inch suction line from the skimmer. Well, we also have main drains, right? So the main drains in the pool are going to be able to handle 65 gallons per minute. The skimmer line can handle 65 gallons per minute if we get a skimmer rated to 75 gallons per minute. So that means if we converge those 2 suction lines at a 2.5-inch suction line, and we install 2.5-inch pipe through the filtration set, then I think we're okay. Everything's good. We're not exceeding 6 feet per second in any individual line, but we can achieve more flow in total, which would be good because pumps can move a lot more than 65 gallons per minute. 65 gallons per minute, we talked about 3 numbers: 38 gallons per minute for 1.5 inch, 65 gallons per minute for 2-inch, and 90 gallons per minute for 2.5-inch pipe. These numbers actually also coincide with a realistic real-world number for the point at which you start to experience advanced efficiency loss in your plumbing system. So a 2-inch pipe moving 65 gallons per minute is pretty efficient because slower moving water is better. Above 65 gallons per minute, you start to experience a very sharp increase in friction loss due to turbulence and just friction. And so in general, if you can adopt those soft maximums, pumps can move more than that. But if we could just actually run a system at, let's say, 65 gallons per minute and never any more than that, that represents a very efficient system. So it's actually a well-designed system. All this is working well together. We've got 90 gallons per minute available out of this pump. We're using half, and honestly, it's a generous half for those deck jets. We still have 45 or so gallons per minute available if we had another feature. If you were just like, you want a dream pool, right? It's why you came here for this. So your dream pool had everything. What else is your dream pool going to have? What about bubblers? Bubblers are a thing, right? You might have a shelf. These are trendy. They're common in modern pools. And it's just, a shallow area where you can put some loungers and hang out and, 8-10 inches of water, something like that. So these shelves are actually kind of notorious for picking up debris, right? Because it's hard to install return lines in this shallow area. So installing a couple of bubblers into the floor of this shallow area might be a really good option. Now you'd have to look at the depth. Like, you probably already have an idea how deep you want your water shelf to be. So go and reference the manufacturer of these deck jets and they'll show you a little plume chart, and based on the orifice size that you choose, so how big the plume is that you want to see, small, medium, or large, how tall do you want it to be? Do you want it to, so you've got a 10-inch deep ledge, but you want your plume of water to be at least 2 feet tall, right? So there's a gallons per minute associated with that. We don't have to guess these numbers. You can just go reference the chart and we can take a look, and that's going to let you know how many of those we can install with the 45 gallons per minute or so that we have available to us. And that brings me to a point where we're now borrowing 100% of the flow of this filtration pump. Is that okay? Can we do that? For me, it's totally acceptable that the entire pool, the return eyelets, which normally have all of the, filtered water returning to the pool, totally stagnant during party mode. For short periods of time, no big deal. Everybody's jumping around, water's moving around. Plus, you've got these water features going anyway, right? And those are actually filtering and moving water too. So I'm not too worried about that. We have the flow available to us. If you're one of these people who just really is a feature-defined person, you want this pool to have tons of different features, this is how we can build them in. We've still only done it with 2 pumps. We did have to add the second filter for a shear descent. I suppose you don't need to have that if you had chosen a rock waterfall or some other kind of waterfall, but a shear descent in particular needed that. So we've done pretty well. I think we've got the pool side covered. Let me think about this for a sec. Is there anything we missed in the pool side? How about lights? We didn't even talk about lights. You can have you can have a dark pool like some kind of barbarian. No, we're going to light this puppy up so you can see it from outer space. So how do we go about doing that? There's 2 different kinds of pool lights, and this is confusing. This is all confusing. The 2 kinds are niche or nicheless, and the nicheless are also called accent lights. So the other ones could also just be called something standard like pool light, spa light. And basically you could equate that to spa plate, or a spa light is like a dessert plate. Pool light is like a dinner plate, great big one. And the nicheless lights, the accent lights, or pencil lights, sometimes they're called, they are very small. They're, about this big, and they're great for lighting up hard to reach places or installing them in shallow areas like a ledge, like we were talking about. But they're not really great for lighting pools. And unfortunately, I've seen a modern trend where designers and builders are going towards using exclusively those nicheless lights because they're cool and they're easy, and you buy a big old box of them, you just install them. They install in the same kind of ports that the return eyelets are installed in, so it's super easy. But they just don't have the power. Like, they lack the guts of these other ones, are like an artificial sun, right? You probably get a suntan hanging out in front of them because they're super bright. And in a pool, I want that. I want it to be bright, right? And so I always recommend to people, you can get some accent lights. If you want to, be fancy, get some extra lighting, have it around, point it at the hard to reach places, any areas that might be shadowed or hard to reach with the main lights, grab a couple. But consider getting a main pool light, if not 2 main pool lights. And here's another tip. These main pool lights, where do you install them in your dream pool? Well, it's easy. Install them wherever you cannot see them from the main seating area around the pool or from your house. If I'm in my house and I want to look at my pool, you don't want to be staring at the source of origin of the light. You want that to be hidden from you, and you want only to see the backlit water. That's what gives you that dramatic effect. So it helps you to figure out where you're going to put them, because if you have 2 of these big lights that you're going to install and they're super bright, you got to space them out a little bit. but we now know that there's, kind of minimal area that you have to choose from, because there's two different places that we have to account for where you don't want to be able to see them. So it kind of defines itself for most pools where you're going to put them, space them out, try to get them located in a place where you're not going to be able to see them from your main sitting area or from your house. Now, where you ended up with those lights, are there going to be any shadows? Look at your pool shape, picture in your mind. We got ledges, we've got benches, we've got other stuff going on. Where you ended up putting those lights, are there any dark spots or anything like that? Any features you want to define? Like we have the sheer waterfall, right? A 6-foot long one. What if we were to put a light or two under the sheer? So when the sheer's on, it could be lit up. You could actually buy a sheer waterfall that has an LED strip built into it, which is a totally great thing. Look into that. Or we could just install some, some of these nicheless lights around just to kind of add to the feature. It really, this is the world's your oyster here. This is where you take your personal flair and just go to town, right? Like sketch all this stuff out, picture where the lights are going to be and all that. And then you can kind of start to figure out what you can do from there. I would say maybe up to a half dozen is probably the number of nicheless lights that we can install in conjunction with two different full-size pool lights before we start to run into a problem, which a problem just means having to buy another transformer to supply another bank of 6 nicheless lights. You can go to town with lighting. And here's another tip. You are absolutely going to be hemorrhaging money building this pool. That's a fact. When it's all over, you don't really get to interact with much of that money you spent. Like, yeah, you got like $5,000, $7,000, $20,000 of pool equipment, and you're swimming around enjoying all that clean water. Like, I know the filter's doing its thing, but man, you paid out the butt for that, but you don't interact with it. It's not fun for you to own it. It's just nice that your pool's clean and awesome and whatever. The lights are one of the few things that you actually are going to get to interact with. You're going to totally be monkeying with it. You're going to change them all. Every time you go swimming, you're going to be setting a new color or a new light show or your favorite every time, whatever the case is. It's one of the very few items that you're going to spend a bundle on, because of course nothing's cheap here, but you're going to get to interact with it. And that's fun and nice, and guests like it. It's dramatic. You know what I mean? There's a lot you can do with it. If you're gonna spend, so like I would throw deck jets out the window in a heartbeat if I could get a couple of more lights going. That's just me. You do you. Okay, pool features are almost done here because this pool is so ballin' I can hardly take it. But I didn't talk about hot tubs, and I didn't talk about swim jets, swim current jets. Okay, so quickly, swim jets will be easy. So swim jets, giant dedicated pump, giant dedicated plumbing, new suction inlets to supply those things in the pool, in addition to the other ones that we had. And then you can install this system that you can swim against. And and they're okay, depending on the manufacturers that you're friends with. Look, I can tell you from experience, I have installed tons of these. I've been involved with hot tub manufacturing, where we did like swim jets and stuff like that. So both like the concrete pool construction version. I even built a set of swim jets for an Olympic swimmer that had to have extra safety like buttons and stuff like that in case the wife or the kids were in the pool. Almost everybody says the same thing. It's not the same. It's you picture endless swimming. It's going to be awesome, right? But swimming's different. You're like pulling yourself through the water, but this you're being pushed, and it feels unnatural. It's not the same rhythm as open water swimming, and you can feel it. And to some people, a lot of people, it's a deal breaker. You don't like it, or you can't match the rhythm, or you keep going off course, and then 80% of the people look towards the next step. What can I do here to make this better? They buy a tether. Install that one way or another. Now you're tethered in, swimming against it, and it adds a little bit of stability, control, and resistance and stuff like that. So it keeps you in focus. And if you can ignore the fact that it doesn't feel like normal swimming, then yes, I guess the massive investment that you made for all that extra stuff is worth it. But for most people, swim jets are just not where it's at. And that brings us to the hot tub. So a very common design is to attach a hot tub to a swimming pool system such that we're going to share some of the pool equipment, like the pump, filter, heater, and save on that whilst having two different things, both a pool and a spa. It's so common, I have to touch on it. So it's a very expensive add-on, because it is essentially add-on, just a couple extra pipes, a little different configuration, probably a much larger heater, and bada bang, you have an attached hot tub. I don't love it, but it is super common. I prefer standalone. And so that means standalone pump filter heater for the hot tub, still standalone pump filter heater for the pool. But money doesn't grow on trees, and sometimes you have to make decisions like this. And the fact is that a lot of people do choose that, but it is very expensive, and it introduces some technical challenge. The technical challenge being you now have a weir wall in your swimming pool, and that simply means water on both sides of the wall. And usually with an attached hot tub, usually we're talking about a concrete pool. You can do it with fiberglass and vinyl liner pools, but the vast majority of the time we're talking about a concrete pool of one design or another. That wall, so it's got a spa and then a wall and then the pool, and then the water overflows that wall because you need to balance the spa water into the pool water. It's how we go about sharing the filtration set for this system. That in a complicated plumbing configuration. That weir wall is challenging due to waterproofing issues, where water will track through the water in both directions, and you will get efflorescence growth, and it will start to cause like delamination of like tile surfaces and etching and staining that's really difficult and time consuming to remove. And it's not the end of the world. It's just be aware of that. That is building a pool is fraught with technical challenge, but this is kind of a defining one. Having a weir wall in a pool is kind of like the same challenge you get when you build like an infinity edge swimming pool. Same deal. It's now got a weir wall where we've got water on both sides, because you've got a surge tank on one side and then the wall, which has actively water flowing over it, and then the pool on the other side. It's not that it can't be done. It now introduces that you need an advanced waterproofing system. If you built a basic concrete pool, you might be able to get away without waterproofing. I mean, people have done it for 100 years. And in general, it's always a good idea. But if you have a weir wall, you kind of have to. Don't even think about not doing it, because you're pretty much like Google weir wall failures in swimming pools, or like stains on, attached hot tubs and swimming pools, and take a good look around and make sure that this is what you're looking to own. Maybe it is because it's the only way that you can afford it. I'm not judging at all. I'm just saying that that's a reality of these systems. It increases the technical complexity, and introduces a couple of different problems in terms of like you're going to need automation control. Your system's going to need to be more expensive. Maybe you didn't need automation before. If it was just the pool, if you have the hot tub, you probably want automation. You can manually do the configuration to change from pool to spa, but most people, the vast majority who have this combination, want it automated. So now it's a lot of money for the pool equipment these days. And when you start automating it, now we're talking about like the Cadillac, right? Like we're bells all over the place in this equipment set, bells and whistles all over the place. So, and that's okay if your budget allows for it. Just be aware that things are nickeling and diming up on us. We now got another pump, another filter, this pump. We haven't talked about like the different equipment yet, but trust me, I'm going to help you spend your money really quickly. I'm a big fan of get a price. What is the price for the standalone hot tub and the standalone swimming pool? And then get the price for the combination shared one. You save a little money, but it's not a ton of money. And maybe you could look towards like a pre-manufactured hot tub, like an all the bells and whistles, acrylic or more likely fiberglass hot tub, and 8, 10, 12, 15,000 kind of range for really expensive, nice one. An attached hot tub to a swimming pool is almost certainly going to cost you double that. And the price is very wildly with swimming pools. Anytime I say price, people are like, "Oh, it's not the price of my area." Prices vary wildly with swimming pools. It is what it is. But that hot tub is going to cost you twice as much for a very basic custom attached hot tub versus an all the bells and whistles fiberglass one that you can just have in the corner, nice and close to your door. They're way more efficient because of the way that they've got a hard cover that locks on it. It's all surrounded with insulation. It's way more efficient than the attached one that's all out in the open and stuff. And it saves you from having to buy like the largest heater known to mankind so that you can heat that spa quickly every time you want to use it. That's the Achilles heel of the attached hot tub. You want to jump in it? Oh, cool. Hit the button, and sometime between 30 minutes and an hour from now, it's ready and you can go in it. To some people, who cares at all about that? To some people, they're like, no, I just don't have the time for that. I just want to get in it. You could pre-program it with your automation so that it's hot by the time you get home, et cetera, but that's just the deal, is you need time for your hot tub to heat up with a shared pool and spa system. So shared pool and spa system, I said it 1,000 times. What is the shared pool and spa system? Essentially, it's the whole pump filter heater, because both the pool and the spa need filtration. You need water movement and chemical treatment and whatnot, and presumably heated water. Maybe you don't need it for the pool, but you definitely need hot water for a hot tub. And so the pump filter heater is what you're sharing. Okay, so let's talk about the equipment, and we'll start with the pump. Everybody listening along here, if you pick the pump that you were going to buy first, before I tell you the one that I think you should get, I bet you it's not the same. And I bet you, I don't even want to tell you yet. Pause it yet. Go pick the pump that you think you were going to go buy. Okay, great. You're back. And so the pump that you're looking at is probably like 3 horsepower, right? Variable speed, brand name, 3 horsepower pump. And it's way overkill. It is probably the most common thing. The thing you would see on the most pools. And again, I already established that most of the pools have 2-inch plumbing, but that pump is oversized for this application. Like, it could and would deliver up to 180 gallons per minute or more if you gave it the right plumbing arrangement. And you're 90. We were talking about 90 was the maximum that we're going to go with. And that's, so we don't need anywhere near that. I would be under 2 horsepower, somewhere in that 1.5, 1.75. That's kind of the range that I would be at. And it would be a variable speed pump. I would be utilizing the variable speed technology to run a 24-hour filtration schedule. I would be utilizing an automation system with which to care for like an attached hot tub. But from this point forward, I'm just going to drop the attached hot tub idea. So I would be using a variable speed pump 24 hours a day. It would be running a filtration schedule that never exceeds those maximum values that we talked about for flow efficiency earlier. And if that's a 2-inch pipe, it's 65 gallons per minute. 2.5-inch pipe, it's 90 gallons per minute. And we're going to basically get a minimum 3 turnovers of the volume of the pool daily. 20,000 gallon pool we were talking about earlier. So basically 60,000 gallons per day through the filtration set based on a 24-hour schedule of high speed, near to high speed for a couple hours, about double that time at a medium speed. And then the rest of the 24-hour day, low speed operation that equals, 25 gallons per minute, something like that. That's kind of the way that I would structure this filtration system to work. The filter, I would almost certainly choose a cartridge filter. It's just my favorite filter. I think all the best pools in the world use cartridge filters. They're the balance of, they're really great for filtration, maybe not quite as great as definitely not as great as a DE filter. I just prefer the maintenance cycle for a cartridge filter, and I prefer the advanced hydraulic design of a cartridge filter. I just prefer the cartridge filter. So that's the one that's going on my pool. Now we just need to talk about size. How big is the cartridge filter? 20,000 gallon pool. I think a 300 square foot cartridge filter would be very adequate for the job. And if you were to look one up, you'd probably discover it has a maximum design flow rate of somewhere around 120 gallons per minute of flow or so. So all this jives and we're good to go here. But wait, there's another part coming. I would invest a little more money here on upsizing that cartridge filter. There's value to me in doing so. It bumps up the maximum design flow rate, which we don't really need in this application, but it's good to know for different applications. But a larger cartridge filter, the larger it goes, the longer you can go in between the time you need to open and clean the filter. So it extends your maintenance cycle. If you say to me, if you come to the table and being like, I want a pool, I don't want to have to do a lot of work to it. In my mind, I'm like, okay, he wants the largest cartridge filter. Like, that's a direct connection that I make there. So 300 was the minimum. 400 is pretty great. By the time I'm over 500 square feet of filtration media on this 20,000 gallon pool, this is well overkill. They make a 600 and a 700 as well. I feel like there's a point of diminishing returns here above 500 square feet, unless the pool is larger. Unless you're 30,000 gallons or more, 40,000 gallon pool. Okay. 600, maybe even the biggest, the 700 square foot filter series. They make bigger ones up into the in the commercial pool line, but you want to steer clear of that because prices and become crazy and availability is very difficult, and just stay within that 700 square foot is the maximum. But you don't bolt that on to a 20,000 gallon pool. It's so well into overkill, you're not getting any value here. So I would go like a 500 square foot filter is the top of the line where I wanted the absolute bee's knees when it comes to, the not just like quality of filtration, but the amount of time, that I can wait before I'm obligated to clean the filter. There's an efficiency incentive for you to clean it more often, but you are obligated to less. Pump, filter, heater. There are gas heaters, there are electric heat pumps, and there are solar heaters. So cutting solar heaters, sorry planet, my dream pool doesn't have a solar heater. So I'm going to have either a gas powered heater or I'm going to have an electric heat pump, and it depends on my application. If I have a attached spa, which I said I wasn't going to talk about, you have to have a gas heater, and you have to have the biggest one that we make, which is 400,000 BTU. They make them larger for commercial applications, and even for some select area residential, you can get 500K, but by and large, 400,000 BTU is the largest for the gas-powered heaters, natural gas or propane. Here's the deal. When you choose a heater, it's not just like which one do you like best, which one sounds good. It comes down to expectation of function. Do you live in an area where it gets cold and in the winter you close the pool and can't go swimming? Or do you live in an area where you swim all the time, or pretty much all the time? So electric heat pumps are great for the areas where it's pretty much hot in swimming season all the time. In the areas where it gets cold, commonly people look towards natural gas or propane. And what it boils down to is this. If you want to just increase your regular swimming season water temperature, an electric heat pump probably is the right one for you. If you were to want to live in a cold area but extend your swimming season into colder months where you normally can't swim, an electric heat pump probably isn't for you. Probably you would prefer to have a gas heater. It's the complicated situation. I mean, both. Install both. You can install both. That's no problem. You can also, from certain manufacturers, buy units which have both. Hybrid units which have both an electric heat pump and a natural gas or a propane heater. And so you get the best of both worlds in this gigantic, super expensive unit that's a 2-in-1. The technology is there. You can have both. It just, most people only have one. Heating represents a very expensive component, on the most expensive component on the pad. And then you want to double down on that, because you want the best of both worlds. Like, I don't know, maybe it's up to you, but there's got to be lines here because this bill is getting outrageous. So I'm going to go with the gas heater because for me, that's where it's at. It's anytime heat. And there's a slot in the front and you just feed $100 bills into it and it'll make your pool hot anytime. You want to go swimming on Christmas while it's snowing? Just get your kids out there feeding $100 bills into it. And that thing will be hot and you can swim, and there's steam, which is just your money, pouring off of it into the atmosphere. An electric heat pump's like a turbocharged solar heater. It works just like a solar heater. It still needs heat. When it's cold outside, the electric heat pump can get some heat, but very little, and the pool needs a lot. And if it's cold outside, the pool is outside, exposed to the environment, and it's just bleeding heat into the air. And so the electric heat pump just can't put out enough BTUs. They're like 50, 60, 80, 100, 120,000 BTU. Like, it's your common range, where it's like 100 to 400,000 BTU for the gas heating. And, so that's why it really just comes down to how you expect to use it. But if you do live in the warmer areas, then an electric heat pump probably is a more efficient, more economical option for maintaining your swimming season temperatures. Pump, filter, heater, salt water. People love it. I mean, I like salt. It's convenient. It's not what it was sold to be, and there's a lot of misinformation, and there are a host of negatives associated with it, but everything's kind of a compromise, and ultimately I like the convenience. I like the feel of the water, and people like to, it's like a prestige thing. Oh, saltwater pool. It's like, when in reality, it's just like a bolt-on item, but we'll bolt it onto this pool because I like it and it's convenient. So we've got now a sanitizing system, which means that I don't need an erosion feature, which would have kind of been another option that you might look at. And so that's already kind of taken care of. So in a way, I've already added chemical automation here because I've automated the sanitizer delivery through the salt chlorine generator. I put salt in the pool through electrolysis. The cell splits the salt from the chlorine. Bada bang, I got chlorine in the pool. And I control it, with the little digital interface, or install the app, use it on my phone, turn my chlorine levels up and down, and that's what controls it. But that's not complete chemical automation. The chemical automation is much more involved in that, and there's a host of different things. And you won't get to the point where it's hands-off. There is no system I can install which is a hands-off system. That, if you want that means you hire a company and they come and they just take care of it for you. That's what it looks like if you want hands-off pool care. We don't have the technology yet, and the limitation being calibration of the instrumentation, right? Like, these things require constant calibration, and you're trying to pursue this hands-free system with chemical automation, but really what you're doing is you're changing a very basic job of just balancing pool water, pouring in some liquid chlorine. Now we're calibrating test probes and comparing things and making sure that everything's hunky-dory, and you're pouring liquid acid into tanks and stuff like that. Like, chemical automation isn't quite there yet. It's not the golden age for that, though I feel like it's close. For me, the limitation for chemical automation in my dream pool is going to stop with the salt chlorinator, though I think it's worth mentioning that we could add to our automation system a pH controller. High pH is kind of a chronic problem with salt chlorine, so I might endeavor to install a pH control system, which is going to monitor the water quality, and it's going to test the pH, and if it detects that the pH is too high, which it usually will be with the salt chlorine pool, it will add some acid. It'll just have a little acid tank, and a Stenner pump squirts a little bit of that muriatic acid, and it dilutes into the pool return line going back to the pool and helps to balance the pH of the water. I probably would install it. Heck, this is a dream pool. Let's go ahead. We're installing that. So that's going into. It doesn't alleviate testing the alkalinity, testing for phosphates, manually managing your pool. Even the sanitizer delivery isn't hands-off. You still need to look into your total chlorine levels and subsequently your combined chlorine levels. If you have combined chlorine, you need to remove it. That system doesn't know a thing about any of that stuff I said. It just makes chlorine. It's got a thing and a dial, and it just makes a little chlorine or a lot of chlorine. That's all it does. You could have, it's already all chlorine. Birds land in it, and they just turn white and turn into dust and float away. It's just making more unless you turn down the dial. So it's not a smart system, right? It's not chemical automation. It's just sanitizer delivery, really. And we've added this pH control system. So we've kind of got a little chemical automation, but not 100%. But that's where the chemical automation is going to stop for this residential pool. But there's another thing that I do want to install. So I like to use as little chlorine as possible, right? And so how it works with the salt chlorine cell is it has a finite amount of chlorine it's going to be able to generate over its lifetime. So if I install something else, like a peripheral device that does a lot of heavy lifting that the chlorine would otherwise have to be doing, I can reduce on the amount of chlorine that I would need. I can turn down the output of that chlorine cell, and I can extend its life significantly whilst reducing my annual exposure to the amount of chlorine in my pool. Less chemicals in pools is something that it's a real hot button. Every pool owner, people coming to the table looking for pools, they want less chlorine, less chemicals in their pool. Chlorine's actually a really good thing, but you just want careful chlorine management, and then you don't want a bunch of extra crap in your pool that you don't need. I agree with those things, but I do want to install something here that's going to do some of this heavy lifting. Like I mentioned, chloramines, you can't have them building up. We got to get rid of them. Why don't we install a peripheral device that's going to take care of that for me? And I've got two that come to mind. So how to describe? One is kind of like your basic level, like, look, I want something here. We're already pretty deep on money, but like, give me an option, but not too techy, kind of straightforward. not too expensive. The other one, I want the absolute best water that money can buy. Okay. So the first one is a germicidal UV light. Old school technology. You've heard of this stuff, right? So we use these in the aquatic industry for risky environments, like children's play pads were the very first time that I was mandated, no, you got to install one of these things. You can't have this aquatic system without having this additional form of protection, because that's a high risk environment, right? We can't have kids getting sick. So, and also, if we're honest about it, they're, making a little bit more of a mess than the average swimming pool. So we have to take extra steps, and germicidal UV was the first time. If I wanted the best money, if I wanted the best money. If I wanted the best water that money could buy, and I would be willing to spend more, and I don't mind new technology or things that are a little bit fancier, it's going to take a little bit more work than a relatively passive, stationary, low-cost germicidal UV light, I would look towards AOP. AOP is advanced oxidation potential, and oxidation is a process that we have to use in swimming pools. It's one of the functions of chlorine. It's what ozone does when you add it. It's already a part of the pool process. Oxidation is something that pools need anyway, whether through the chlorine itself and the chemical process. But when combined with germicidal UV, ozone and UV, when you mix them together, it generates hydroxyl radicals. And hydroxyl radicals are an oxidizer. They're one of the most reactive elements in the lower Earth's atmosphere, 1,000,000 times more reactive than UV or ozone alone, or one of the two of them alone. It does the same thing that oxidizers do. It just does it 1,000,000 times faster than they do. And so that is the latest, greatest technology in swimming pools, is AOP, advanced oxidation process. There's a couple of different kinds on the market. There are some which combine the germicidal UV and ozone together to create hydroxyl radicals. There are some which use a proprietary process that does not involve ozone and UV together. So there's a couple of different options out there, but ultimately they are AOP, hydroxyl radical generators, and they will do a ton of the heavy lifting, and they will get rid of combined chlorine and other contaminants and bacteria and parasites, and you will need a lot less chlorine, not none, notably, but also these systems independently consume chlorine as part of their function. So that's notable. But in conjunction, there is a net positive benefit into using it, and you will use less chlorine. I encourage people, don't look at it like a day-to-day basis with chlorine use. Look at it like an annual basis. You will use less chlorine annually. I don't know, 30%, 40%, 50% less, something in this ballpark range, because we're installing this peripheral device, which is going to do with the heavy lifting, and we're going to be able to turn the dial output on our salt chlorinator way down, thusly extending its life tremendously. Pump, filter, heater, salt chlorinator, AOP system or germicidal UV, and the water is going back to the pool through a return pressure side manifold, of which we're going to have actuated zones for different features that we've installed into the pool, the bubbler system and any water features that we want. This is where we're going to be controlling that. Otherwise, the water would just be returning through the pipes, which go to the return eyelets, which are oriented in the pool and help to circulate the pool water and diffuse all of that chemically treated heated water back into your swimming pool. Let's talk about automation for a second. With the average swimming pool, surprisingly, you need very little automation control, primarily because the pump itself, the heart of the system, has a variable speed drive controller, and it has an interface, and you can just program a weekly schedule and it'll just run that schedule. And you're like, yeah, but what about my heater? And it's like, okay, what temperature do you like to swim? 80 Fahrenheit? 80 Fahrenheit. When's the next time you need to interface with the heater now? If you don't have a complex system that's changing heat and this and that often, then it's a little bit set it and forget it. So, for a lot of pools, you don't really need the full suite automation system. It's more for the advanced pools, and there's a benefit to be had. And every manufacturer here is making multiple levels of automation systems. You have your like small, medium, and large, like your entry level bolt-on aftermarket. You got your kind of like, these are the main ones that we sell. You can use them on new pools, existing pools. And then they'll have like a Cadillac one with like all the bells and whistles and just tons of relay ports and all this other stuff. The automation panel that's right for you depends on how many features we've chosen. Based on what we've talked about up until this point, I don't think I would go with the entry level. We're probably going to be missing a relay or two for some control of stuff. I'd probably go at least one level up. Do I invest more? Maybe, but I probably go with the mainstream automation system. It's going to give you the phone control most likely, and probably Wi-Fi enabled. It'll control all the stuff you need and probably up to 16 more pumps, literally. And so there's no value to me in spending more there, because we're spending all this other money coming up with this dream pool here. And so I think I choose the middle of the road automation panel there. And it does give me some app control, which I do want, some functionality to adjust the chlorinator output or turn the lights on and off. The lights on and off is a really nice one. I mean, there's so many different things, right? So I think we're going to go the mid-level automation control. And if I'm not mistaken, is that not a wrap on the full suite of equipment for the dream pool? Holy bananas, that took a long time. I'm exhausted. I don't know about you guys, but I think we did a pretty good job unpacking this whole idea of this dream pool installation and what it actually, like, what's the actual mechanics of how this idea comes together into this plan to build this awesome pool. And for me, it looks a lot like that. And I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can check out my website, swimmingpoolsteve.com.